Bitcoin and other cryptos plunge as fears over a new COVID variant shakes traditional markets. The price of Bitcoin was down about 10%, 7.4% over the last day, Bitcoin down 6%, and Ethereum fell 7.8%. Most stocks are down as the world is currently afraid of a potential new, heavily mutated COVID variant. The so-called new variant has been discovered in South America, South Africa, and now Israel and Belgium. The variant appears to deliver a large viral load similar to the Delta virus variant, meaning that it spreads very well. And unfortunately, the variant appears to have developed new spike proteins, which could invalidate the effects of the vaccine. Remember, the vaccine, most of them were trained to identify spike proteins. If the spike protein is substantially different, it is possible, we do not have full information yet, that the virus could overwhelm even vaccinated individuals. Justin Newton, the market is down, Bitcoin is crashing, the world is on fire. How will this affect Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if we look at what happened with the last pieces of the pandemic, right, what ended up occurring was governments provided quite a bit of financial relief into their economies in various means. And that led to the printing of quite a bit of money all across the globe by various governments. Generally, when that occurs, that's good for Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is a counter to inflationary assets like US dollar or others when there's printing going on. So, I while personally I would prefer that there not be new scary variants of COVID and that we could get back to normal. I think that this will probably, once people settle in a little bit and we think about what the effects might really be, if there are impacts, it'll probably be good for Bitcoin.
That's a good point. And a lot of people in the traditional markets are just saying that we just don't have enough information on this yet. A lot of people made their choices early. They were afraid. They got out of the market. That could be the wrong move if some of this information about the new variant is not as bad as initially reported. Dan, Eve, your thoughts on the market crash and the potential new variant?
Well, there's a new variant of opinions on inflation going around, and lots of people seem to think it's a good thing for some obscure reason. But obviously, inflation is not a good thing. And whilst COVID's pretty close to home right now because my son's got it, so I'm in the same house as my little 2-year-old has got COVID, and I'm waiting for my PCR test. Otherwise, I'd be with Ben and everyone else at CoinFest right now. Also, broadcasting live. But yeah, I don't know. It's easy to kind of attribute, some movements in the market from relating to COVID specifically, for example. If another kind of massive lockdown happens, there's probably going to be more stimulus, more checks, and then more people buying Bitcoin. So overall, it's just going to end up in another pump. So I think ultimately, whilst we can kind of say Bitcoin might be following the stock market, which is everything's kind of down right now. Ultimately, Bitcoin is going to completely decouple itself from all markets, whilst people slowly come to realize that inflation is bad and Bitcoin is the best inflation against best hedge against inflation because of the fact that it's the hardest money. It's rock solid money.
Martin Wishmare.
It's of course it's scary, and the market's response is primarily airlines that went down. The rest of the market went down too, but I guess we'll see the home working stocks like Zoom will go up again, and for Bitcoin, back in that last year when the market tanked, everything went down. Bitcoin went down too. Bitcoin was one of the first to recover once people realized that, the honey badger doesn't care. And Bitcoin will rebound. And, especially if the money printing starts again, well, correction, it never stopped. They kept printing, at least in Europe, they kept printing more euros. So they just left, and they left the printer on. So I'm really curious what they're going to do now. So I think if people are worried, they're buying real estate and stuff to like counter the inflation. But I think once they realize that Bitcoin is really not affected by the new virus, where it remains to be seen what the effects are, because at this point we just don't know, that people will get back into Bitcoin. I think this is just definitely going to happen. I'm not too worried about Bitcoin. I'm more worried about this crazy new virus, to be honest.
There's an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. Josh Sigala, your thoughts?
Oh no, not my thoughts on this subject. Jesus, what have you opened? This is a can of worms. The only new variant is called communism, and it's sweeping the globe. No, really, I mean, the thing that I'm not scared of this new variants generally become weaker and weaker. That's just how virology works. It's not like it might become more viral, but it generally doesn't hurt its victims as much. And you know what? Like, honestly, whether you call it communism, whatever, but we're heading towards a really, really dangerous part in society. Whether you like this, the way that the government's dealing with this or not, where I think we can all agree that having everybody in a global surveillance state probably isn't the future that you want your grandchildren to grow up in. I don't know about you. It sort of rubs me the wrong way. So yeah, I don't know whether it's Bitcoin. It won't be affected. Bitcoin is like the fainting goat of money, and the honey badger, of course, but it sort of just tips over and then gets back up. It doesn't matter. It's ridiculous. This whole thing, I'm so over it. People, get your vitamin D, get some exercise, lose some weight, join the herd. Just turn off your televisions. Really, that's the end of that.
Josh does make a good point. We don't know about the payload of this virus. It is possible that the death count will be smaller. Viruses do get weaker in parts, but this one got stronger in other parts. Variants come and go. Ben Ark joining us from Coinbase, from LN Bit. How's it going, Ben?
Coinfest. I'm sorry for the music is pretty loud, but there's a bit of a party vibe going on here, which is quite nice. It's nice to see, Bitcoiners in the flesh again, particularly when we could talk about these new variants and another wave and future lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, lockdowns and COVID, they were good for Bitcoin. Arguably, lots of people spending time on the internet and feeling that they had civil liberties encroached and wanting more sort of personal freedom, and then they look towards liberating technologies such as Bitcoin, and they just spend more time on the computer and become more digitally native, and that's ultimately good for Bitcoin. So yes, there's a knock in the Bitcoin price temporarily, but ultimately all this horrible stuff is, us all being forced to stay at home and stay on our computers more is ultimately good for Bitcoin. As it was, we've suddenly been propelled, 5 years into the future to what we thought where we would be, back in 2019 when all the COVID stuff kicked off. So yeah, it's ultimately good for Bitcoin, but temporarily, obviously with the markets and everything else crashing, people just want to find some stability and something which is more stable, and Bitcoin isn't currently very stable. But it's temporary speculation and traders which cause that price shift. It's the bedrock of hodlers continues to grow strong, and Bitcoin becomes more stable over time. But yeah, it's great to temporarily, while we're able to have a little bit of freedom to be able to meet other Bitcoiners, hang out, have a few beers and things, and very lucky to be here. It's a shame not here too, Thomas.
It would be great. It was unfortunately timed right up against American Thanksgiving and then all the virus stuff happening. But I'm going to say something horribly political here, so everyone put on your long-term thinking caps, the kind you use to read history textbooks, and let's just think about the possibilities that Joe Biden had here, President Joe Biden. I think that Biden acted in the interest of the American people. Biden acted as the American president when he kept the extra doses of the vaccines. It seemed pretty clear to me at the beginning that the people who didn't want to take the vaccine didn't care about information and wouldn't take the vaccine. So it's unfortunate, if you look at just a supply issue, that we kept so many extra doses, so many rotten and expiring doses here in the United States and the developed countries, and didn't perhaps share them at a greater rate with the developing world. Viruses like this are truly a global problem. And as we've seen, this variant developed in South Africa first, quickly got to Israel, is in Belgium, and it's as good as everywhere else now, especially with the EU currently hanging on to their lack of travel restrictions. They want to be open to all their member states. They want to be open to business. Unfortunately, that's exactly what the virus wants to spread to all member states. So if Biden had done the other thing, if he had said, okay, you Americans don't want to take the vaccine, instead of having thousands of doses ready at every, medical store, every pharmacy near you, going bad every day, we're going to take those doses and give them for free to the developing world. Pfizer, Moderna, J&J also could have done this. They also have the ability to make extra doses, to open source the formula. There's a lot that they could have done, and it really comes down to what Jesus said in the Bible: give to me that which you would give to the least among us. And it seems like, at least right now, we didn't help these people. They spread the virus around, created new variants, and I hope it's not true. I hope that the variant goes away, and I hope everything's fine. The current information I have doesn't look good. But yes, it does look like that lack of compassion and care for other people may have doomed us all, or at least doomed quite a few of us as the new variant of the virus spreads. So it takes a lot to look at that. Clearly, I think you can see arguments for both sides. You could say the American president, as American CEO, should have protect the American people. But then there's that butterfly problem where the American people also live in the world, and helping the people of the world would have helped the American people. Leaving the people of the world out there to spread virus doesn't look like it's helping us.